Blackwater Ben by William Durbin, Chapter 12. Nevers and the Sissy Sticks. As more loggers hired on, the Blackwater logging camp shifted into high gear. The cooking was taking Pa and Ben longer every day, but when the push asked Pa if he needed help, he said, "Me and Ben are doing fine." Ben felt like blurting out, "What about sleep, Pa? How am I going to get breakfast on the table when the time comes that I'm still doing dinner dishes at daybreak?" Things were so hectic that Ben never had a chance to listen to Wendy's stories, and whenever Ben took Charlie his meals, he had to hustle right back to the cook shack. Luckily, the push took it on himself to bring a cookie over one afternoon. "This boy stopped by looking for work, Jack," the push said. "He's got cooking experience. I wondered if you'd want to try him out." Before Pa could answer, Ben said, "An extra hand wouldn't hurt, Pa." Then he crossed both fingers behind his back. Pa looked ready to snap at Ben, but he turned to the boy and asked, "How did you get fired from your last job?" "I didn't get fired, sir," the boy drawled out. Fired so it sounded like fired. "I quit." "Who'd you work for?" "Matt Mackey. He's a good cook." "I know, sir," the boy said. "But I got tired of eating fish and soup and boiled taters." "Matt does favor fish stew. What's your name?" "Nathaniel Evers." "Well, Nathaniel, we fry most of our spuds around here." "I'd like that, sir." "What do you say, Pa?" Ben asked, his fingers still crossed. Nathaniel was a short, skinny boy with thin blonde hair and a chin that came out to a sharp point. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other as he waited for Pa to answer. "You're a mite scrawny, but I suppose we could give you a chance. Let's see what kind of potato peeler you are." Pa tossed him a paring knife. "But I figured Nathaniel Evers is way too long of a name for a toothpick like you. I say we make it Nevers." "I reckon I've been called worse," Nevers said, reaching for a potato and stepping up to the counter. Nevers grinned as the peeling started to fly. "What are you laughing at?" Pa asked. "I ain't laughing, sir." Nevers drew out his words long and slow. "That's my natural look." Ben started peeling too. He was amazed at Nevers' hands. "Where did you learn to peel spuds so fast?" Ben asked, as a wet potato squirted out of his grip and rolled onto the floor. Still grinning, Nevers bent down and tossed the potato back to Ben. "If I wanted to eat, I had to work." "Well, didn't your parents feed you?" Ben scratched his neck with the back of his hand. "My mama died of the flu epidemic in the South Carolina 2 years ago, and the country put me in an orphanage." "I'm sorry to hear that. Did your pa die too?" "I don't know right where he's at. A few years back, Daddy gave up on tenant farming and went to work in a cotton mill." Though Nevers talked slowly and deliberately, his fingers rotated the potato so fast that it blurred. Mama warned Daddy those mills were towns at fast paces, but he wouldn't listen. At first, he strutted home all proud and gave us some money. Then one Saturday, he didn't come home. Nevers tossed the peeled potato in the pan and started on another. We never saw him again. "After my mama died, I was sent to the orphans' home, but I ran off. They brung me back 3 times, but the 4th time I kept on going. I'd rather join Mama in the cemetery than stay in that place." "How old were you?" Pa asked from the far end of the counter, since Pa wasn't a good listener. Ben was surprised he was paying attention to Nevers' story. 11 and a half. "And you hiked all the way to Minnesota?" Pa asked. "I have to admit it weren't easy," Nevers said. "I'm so little that every cop figured I was a runaway. The only way I got through was by hiding out near the railroad yards and riding the freights. I panhandled a few crumbs from food and warmed them by stealing kerosene out of brakesmen's lanterns. A sand-filled pail makes a tolerable hand warmer on a winter night. My closest call came in Duluth. I just got caught borrowing a shirt off clothesline, and a cop was set to haul me in, but an old Jack walked up and said, 'This boy's with me.' The next thing I knew, I was on the train to Cussin. That same Jack talked a clerk into signing me on at the Ash Lake logging camp." "You've done good by yourself," Pa said. "Losing parents is rough on a youngster, but losing both would test his mettle." "Ben's lucky to have his family," Nevers said. "All I got is Pa," Ben said. "My ma passed away too." "That's a shame," Nevers says. "We miss her a lot," Pa said, scraping the side of the mixing bowl. Ben was hoping Pa would say more, but he looked at the half-filled pan of spuds instead and said, "You boys better give her tar paper if you're going to get supper on the table before the next week." After hearing Nevers' story, Ben realized that his own life had been pretty easy. Pa and Mrs. Wilson expected him to work hard, but they'd always done their best to take care of him. The boys were just starting on the carrots when Wendy stopped by. "How's her new cookie?" "I'm fine." Nevers kept working on a carrot, As he studied the bull cook, Ben noticed that Never's feet shifted nervously when he met someone new, like he was getting ready to run. "That's good," Wendy said. "These boys have been short-handed since their last cookie decided to give Jack a syrup bath." "Nevers is a fine potato peeler," Ben said. Wendy nodded. "I don't doubt that." Then he looked at Nevers in the eye. "You don't smoke, do you, boy?" "Why you asking?" "I advise you to lay off the cigs at this camp. The two things the Push Collins, his name is, hates more than anything else in this world are cigarettes and thermometers. He tolerates chewing tobacco and pipes, but he calls cigarettes sissy sticks. If he catches a man smoking, he fires him on the spot." "Don't he warn him?" Nevers asked. "He figures fellows should be smart enough to know that much on their own. But the Push has got such a soft heart that he won't send a man down the road by his lone self. He waits till he catches two of them sissy stick puffers, and he fires them both at once. That way they can keep each other company on their way home." "But why does he hate thermometers?" Nevers asked. Ben said, "The Push claims if the fellow knows how cold it is, they won't want to work. He only allows one thermometer in camp and keeps it to himself." "That's right," Wendy said. "The Push never works the horses when it's colder than 40 below. That can kill them, you know. But the men have to go up to 50 below." "Isn't he afraid of killing the men?" Nevers asked. Wendy laughed. "I never saw a lumberjack die of cold as long as he kept moving." Pock picked up the vegetable pan and said, "Nevers has got the quickest fingers with a paring knife I've ever seen." "It helps that my hands are small, sir," Nevers said. "And you're polite, too," Pa said. "I like a cookie who ain't always talking a bushel a basket full of questions." When it came time to serve supper, Nevers worked twice as quickly as Skip had, as he ladled up the beans with one hand and passed a loaf of bread with the other. Pa said, "I can see that you're one boy who won't let grass grow under his feet. I ain't never been accused of dilly-dallying, sir." During the cleanup, Nevers proved that he was speedy dishwasher, too. But the thing that impressed Ben the most was how quickly he set out the breakfast dishes. Nevers walked alongside the tables, plunking down each plate and centering a bowl and a cup on top without breaking his stride. By the time they'd finished the tables, Ben was tuckered out. But Nevers was still grinning. "Don't you ever get sick of doing kitchen work?" Ben asked. "I'm used to being as busy as a stump-tailed cow in a fly time. Besides, your pa's easy to work for." "But pa's always ornery. If you think he's ornery, you ain't seen many logging camp cooks." Ben looked doubtful. "It's true. Before I hired on with that Finn cook Mackie, I worked for an old coot named Sorghum Sam. Got his nickname 'cause he favored everything with sorghum and molasses. The only thing worse than his cooking was his temper. One day, a green jack asked why the stew was so sweet. Without saying a word, Sam picked up the whole kettle and threw it at the door. The hinges busted and the carrots and spuds and moose meat flew all over. That jack never spoke in the cook shack for the rest of the winter. The whole time Ben and Nevers were getting ready for bed, Nevers kept telling one funny story after another. Pa normally liked it quiet before bedtime, but he got a chuckle when Nevers told about a mean fellow in Ohio who'd hire him to dig a drainage ditch. "I worked 3 days," Nevers said, "but instead of paying me like he promised, that good-for-nothing trash ran me off with his shotgun. I got even by sneaking back that night and shoveling the ditch full again." Once his story was done, Nevers fell asleep quickly as he sets the table. One minute he was jabbering full speed ahead, and the next minute he was snoring like he'd been cracked with a brickbat. Pa was soon rattling the rafters, too. Ben lay for a long time trying to sort through his first afternoon with the slow-talking Carolina boy, who never stood still. Skip had been mean and sneaky right from the start. Working with Nevers felt like it was going to be interesting, but more complicated.